Hello and welcome back to another physical education and wellness implementation video. My name is Paul Marlette and this is the first of a few videos on spatial awareness and tactics. This is the asynchronous side. This one's so important I wanted to make sure I had yellow sunglasses. Awesome. Thank you for joining me on this session. As I said, this is the asynchronous version of what we were doing live on Zoom. So I hope you get something out of this. In this first video, we're going to be looking at the theory of spatial awareness and some of the scope and sequencing. So let's jump right in. Who is this guy? You can check out my bio. I've been teaching for over 20 years, have taught grade 1 to 12 in a whole bunch of settings, and I'm the one who's been running these sessions for you all. So this is the exact write-up that we put in for what we're trying to cover here. I just put this in so everyone knows what we're working on. As always, I'd like to acknowledge the land for this entire series. So because we're all across Alberta, we are across Treaties 7 and 8, and I would like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territories in Alberta of the many First Nation, Métis, and Inuit, whose voices and footsteps have marked these lands for centuries. So a couple of the key things that we've been looking at throughout the course of this series on the physical education and wellness implementation of the new curriculum is this notions of when are we evaluating, what are we looking for, and how do we build out lessons, how do we build the complexity of the games and the things we're having our students do in elementary and through the junior high so that we actually see improvement, and as they move into those next higher grades, they're ready for the higher levels of the cusps that show up in those grades as well. Now, when you're going through these sessions, these ones I'm trying to keep under kind of 15 minutes. The big thing that I would look for is like one or two things, right? One or two things that are going to implement, that you can change your practice right away. So next week, what's one or two things you can try? There's a lot of information in these, and that's why we're recording them, is so you can go back through them and pick out different things as you go. For example, one of my big things is that I don't ever carry equipment. I don't think that's a physical education teacher's job. That's the student's job. So little things like that that make a big change. So what are these two things in the new curriculum? The spatial awareness is literally the ability to understand your relationships to objects and other people in the area around you and how you move through that space. And I really like the new curriculum with this because it's pretty prescribed for each grade. Now, tactics, on the other hand, which start coming in about the grade 3-4 level, and they get pretty robust. So these are actions and strategies that are planned to, I'll just read it, plan to achieve an overall objective individually or as a team in response to the other parameters of a game situation. Now, why are these two things so closely related? If we're not aware of our own body, how do we now interact when we're doing offense, defense? It's really hard to work with other people unless we have control over our own bodies. In a nutshell, when we look at the kindergarten to grade 2, what the curriculum, the cusps, are asking us to do with these groups is to develop spatial awareness and competency of body movements. Now, I am currently a junior high phys ed teacher and math teacher. I have taught all the way down to grade 1 in phys ed. And what I see generally coming up is that we still have students coming into junior high who still are not really in control of their body, or they don't even know how to see where open space is or why that's even important. So hopefully we can tackle some of those things today. In the grade 3-4, we are looking at reacting and adjusting spatial awareness to game situations or other students. Now, those first two, yeah, we can do tag all we want, but how we get into tag, that's going to be the key. And the grade 5 and 6, this is where we're moving beyond just moving around space to how can we actually maximize success of our team or individually based on the situations that arise. So more game-based situations. So what are these basic locomotor skills that will allow us to do this? You're going to see this first thing come up quite often. Never introduce a game until you have a baseline. Okay, safety is the key. Just like in any other subject, if we're going to do some kind of assessment later down the road, we want to know where they're starting. Otherwise, how do we know what growth we've had? So for me, in terms of locomotor skills, there's 4 big ones when they're moving around space. Okay, so I still do this. I did this when I taught grade 12 physical education. We still started with these things. So number 1, where are they looking? Okay, when we're looking after safety, for me, this is number 1. Number 2 is, can they see space? So many students, when they get in the gym, they're crazy. They're just running around, right? They're having a good time, but they're not really paying attention to the things that are going around them. Can we lead and follow? That's the lead up to tag. And the last one is, are they being creative? There's some beautiful cusps in our new curriculum that really push this. How can we creatively move through space? And with the younger grades, this is a big hook. It allows you to do some stuff pretty quickly. So some really quick progressions. So moving through space safely. Can they travel in a straight line without hitting things or other people? It seems pretty straightforward. When I do workshops across the province, there's usually 1 or 2 adults who struggles with this. Okay, how different ways that they travel. Can they change directions without hitting others? Right? Believe it or not, in my opinion, that needs to be taught. So what are the stages of slowing down, looking, and then going? And I'm going to do all this stuff walking first until I see what these kids can do. Can they adjust the level of speed and direction? That's a pretty high level thing when you're moving through space. All right. So even that one little scope and sequence, this is also a lead up to tag. It's a great thing to spend our first weeks on. The next one is seeing space. Can we see obstacles and hazards? Do we see other people in the space? Like in the first one, if I need to change direction, can I actually look out of the peripheral vision to make sure there's no one on my left before I turn that way? Right? The biggest injuries that often happen in the gym, the one that I see the most is actually kids slipping on water. The other one is collisions. And so if we take our time building this, you can really limit those kinds of injuries in your gym. The next one, can they avoid people and objects? Can they see open space? And can they identify teammates in space? So you see that higher level. Now we're not just walking through space or jogging through space or dancing through space, but now can I actually recognize that they're wearing a red pinny or a belt? Lead and follow. Can I lead a partner safely through space without looking back? Do we have the trust that our team is with us? Can I follow a leader using peripheral vision? This means that I'm scanning side, I'm scanning ahead. I'm actually seeing a greater space. And can I follow an opponent safely through space? Do you see how this becomes a tactic? So spatial awareness leads into offense-defense strategies. So a lot of the games I'm going to show you today, or I'm going to talk about in this series, I should say, are going to be designed to build up to that end goal in mind. Hey, creativity. Can we move in linear? Can we incorporate levels? Can we adjust speed and direction? Can we do they do unexpected things individually or with a team, like that element of surprise? Can we introduce elements of movement? So these are kind of the overarching pieces that that hold up the rest of this work. So again, never introduce a game unit until you have a baseline. For me, this also means going slowly. I will never let any kids, even in high school, come into my gym and play a game of tag right out the bat, because I don't know what I'm dealing with, and that's setting me up for a lot of collisions. So in previous sessions, we've also talked a little bit about this notion of increasing complexity and increasing confidence. So with all of these pieces, what I would recommend is we always start out walking, then walking quickly, jogging, and then maybe running. With those little kids, sometimes you're never going to open up and let them throw that throttle full down, right? So this is all through open space with no collisions. So if we have success in that, then we can increase the speed or increase the complexity. One of the other things I like to talk about with the elementary kids is this thing called positive and negative space. It's an art term, also a dance term. So positive space is physicality. If I can touch it, it's positive. Negative space is all around me. And we can use these terms to also help kids start to realize that if there's a big clump of kids, well, guess what? That's positive. We want to be on the other side of that. We want to have more space to move, right? So this, you can see we're leading up to like certain tag games, and I love tag games. I play them a lot. The big thing is that prior to actually getting into that, these are the kind of scope and sequences that I'm trying to build in. So changing directions, start from scratch as it is a new skill. So how do you actually change directions? Well, if we analyze it, if you're running, to start out with, I'm going to slow down, maybe even stop for my kinders in 1. I'm going to look to the direction I'm going, and then I'm going to start moving again. Look where you want to go. Point where you want to go. If you have kids who struggle with this, have them point the direction they're going. Seems silly, okay? But a lot of parents are not playing these kind of active games. If you want to change direction, point where you want to go, turn your body, and then move. It leads up to us jogging on the spot using your peripheral vision, looking where you want to go, and then transitioning into that spot. The number one rule in all of spatial awareness for me is look where you're going, never behind. So how do we find space? This again, can we get to open space without any collisions or anyone falling down? So years ago I came up with this analogy of spreading the peanut butter. One of those impromptu things that seemed stupid at the time, but I still use it to this day. I used to use it with my basketball teams. So this is a key skill for every single progression in any kind of invasion game moving forward for the rest of their lives. So I think it's worth the time to stop and work on it. So the big thing here is that if I talk about a peanut butter sandwich, if you got a piece of bread, you don't put the peanut butter in one single line or in one corner and then eat the peanut butter and then the rest of the bread. We want to spread it out. And the only way we spread out in the gym is to take the time to build some activities where they have to get better at it. Right? Really quick one that I got years ago is stop and look around. Are you in the clear or are you in the forest? So dots and lines. There's a lot of those vinyl dots out there. We have a bunch of them in our school. We have one per kid if we need them. If you got a pretty advanced group, you can put out half the dots per student. So if you have 20 kids, put out 10 dots. But here's the only thing that you're doing here is you have them find a dot. Okay, and spread the dots out. Put them out randomly. You could even have kids put those dots down. Give them a signal. If you're a whistler, you're a talker, you use music, whatever it is. And just have the kids move around the space. Okay, have them move around the space. If you have a stop signal, you can even have them stop, look around, and if they're all clumped up, have them go to the dots right away. Or the half of the kids who get to the dots, they can actually, when you give the stop signal, they run to the dot. The other kids have to keep moving. And what this allows us to do is, number one, analyze some of their locomotor skills, but are they starting to think further ahead, where if they want to stop on a dot, they have to go to the dots where there's less kids around it. Right? Now this is a warm-up game you could do for weeks. Right? Modify it, add stuff to it, increase the complexity. Even put a whole bunch of dots close together and then a few that are scattered out, and have those discussions about if you're anticipating the signal is going to stop, the stop signal is coming, then you want to get away from the masses because your chances of getting that dot are going to be higher. So a simple little game. You can also do it with hula hoops. Just be careful with little kids with hula hoops. Sometimes they are a little challenging. So the key to all tactics to follow is constant movement and movement to space and away from objects. So this is when tactics start to come into the fold in the older groups. So great thing to do here is to use some rubber chickens, bean bags. You can add all kinds of things in here where you have a partner and one of your partners has to find a hoop or a dot when you have the stop. And the only time that you can move is when you pass off the object. So I have a partner, I pass the object, I can now run through space. Now, as soon as I get the pass, I have to stay still. You can even add that where they can only catch on a dot. This one doesn't involve a stop, but it does involve the kids moving around constantly. So it doesn't seem like it's a really robust game, but I play this kind of stuff quite frequently. This is another one called Collecting Treasure, and there's so many variations of this. One of the ways I like to play it is with 6 teams and 6 hoops and 6 beanbags. And the way that you get the beanbags back is that you have to pass the beanbags to another player on your team to get to your hoop. If you drop the beanbag, it has to go back to the original hoop. You can intercept passes if you want. You can add that rule on. But now what you have is you have a bunch of hoops, and they'll see that some of them have more beanbags. Is that always the best beanbag to go to? I mean, the hoop, is that always the best hoop to go to? Not necessarily, because it's actually easier to pass the bean bags around if there's no one around you, right? So these little activities, underneath them is this notion of, are we aware of our surroundings? So as I mentioned before, tag is one of my primary games. Okay, I love tag. Tag is such a great skill for students to have in all its variations. I'm not a big fan of elimination games, but I'll leave that to you, make up that decision. But this is also one of the most dangerous games in a confined space. But it's also one of the easiest ones to mitigate those risks with a few little techniques. So the big thing with tag is that it allows us to assess and evaluate so many of our movement cusps. Now on the back here, I'll link all these documents to in the files. But this document over here, so really small writing on it. Okay, it's really tiny writing, but this is all of the movement cusps for the entire curriculum from grade 1 to grade 6. Okay, now I've also made these a little easier to work with. In the curricular session I did, I was explaining how the movement piece, the movement social emotional skills piece is actually, there's 3 embedded subcategories within that one overarching idea. So that overarching idea is movement skill development. But within that, we have spatial awareness, we have tactics, we have manipulative skills, locomotive skills, and then we have the social emotional. So in this one, we're primarily focused on what I call the A's, the 2 A's. So this is the stuff about body awareness, it's tactical support, tactics, support movement, complexities, and competencies. So that's the piece that we're really dialing into. If you've never seen these games, I can't play them. I have links here. You can check them out in the PowerPoint. If I play them, it will shut things down in terms of the copyright. But there's some links here to a couple of games. Now, these are games from India. Coco is this incredible tag game, and the complexity is, at first, it's overwhelming. But this is one of my most requested games that I play with my students. It's crazy. I can't, you just got to click the link and watch it. This is a game I do play in my gym. Sometimes we play it outside with 2 games going at a time. It's exhausting, but it really dials into the tactics for those 5, 6s and even older kids. Uch Nich is a really neat little tag game. It has some slightly different parameters than our typical ones. The last one is Kabaddi. I still quite haven't dialed into this one in school because it's a full tackle version, but I'm close to it. So I just like to put these links up so you get a slightly different experience. So now that we've talked about kind of what spatial awareness is and how it differs from tactics, I want to dial into my number 1 activity for every single grade that I would never teach a phys ed class without doing. Because right away, it's like a pre-test assessment, gives me everything I need to now build out so we have a common language. So again, walking, speed walking, jogging, running, especially in the elementary levels with those younger kids. And again, all through open space with no collisions. You can do these inside, outside. That part doesn't matter. But the whole idea is that we're in a confined space. So put out some cones. Don't let kids just run around willy-nilly through the field. We want to get them used to being in a confined space. Why? Most games have boundaries. So remember, I'm always trying to keep that end game in mind. So the one that I want to talk about specifically is something called truck and trailer, because this is, for me, the ultimate lead and follow setup. Right? So we're going to talk about a few different iterations of it. So the very first thing I'm going to do here is that I'm having some issues in my gym when it comes to performance or filming. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to go down to a little more low tech. I'm just going to make this a little bigger for this part. There we go. Okay, so here I have 1980s Troll, Prince Charming, and Garfield, and Batman. So these are going to be my partners. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to get kids into partners. So a bunch of partners who are going to be in the gym. Just a little point, this is kind of what I've been saying, but everyone has their own kind of take on it. I really do believe that as much as we can, teachers should be making partners. It just takes away a lot of those social pressures. So I'm going to put these two guys away for now, and we're going to focus on these two. So my 1980s troll is going to be my truck. So they're going to be in the lead right here. They're going to have a follower. So the truck is the lead, the trailer is the follower. And all we do when we start, we have them walk around space. And it's like follow the leader. Now when we're starting, we're just moving. Okay. Now the two commands we have for this are switch. I'll just pop back to this slide here so you can see it. There we go. Our switch and change when we get there. Okay. But right now, the only one we're working on is switch. So switch means to switch the leader. So if we're going this way and I yell switch, what happens is that both partners turn around and now they're following the other person. Okay, switch, it changes again, they turn and then they follow each other. That's really the entire spot. Now again, you can start to embed things like, I would like you to try and find as much open space as you can. So we're walking through space, we're jogging. The goal here is not to lose your partner. Okay. Now it gets a little more exciting when you add in maybe another set of partners. So now what we have is we have 4 people in our truck and trailer. Our 1980s troll is pretty awesome. Okay, that 1980s troll is going to be the truck, but now I have 3 trailers. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add a new call. So if I say switch, the same thing happens. We switch the lead and everyone turns around. And now we're following Batman, not the troll. Okay, so that's the switch call. The switch call stays. We're also going to add a new thing called change. Okay, so what happens when we change the leader is that the person in the front is going to now run to the back. So we're running, we're following Garfield. We say change. This person runs to the back. We say switch. Now Garfield is leading again. Okay, now if you can imagine 20 to 30 kids, 35 kids doing this in a gym, it gets a little crazy. But the neat thing is that now you're working through space with a group in kind of a real life game situation. Because we have so many people walking around that now we really have to be focused on our little group. Now the last thing that I would add to this is this chaos variable that's called unhook. And when we say unhook, whoever is the current truck just puts their hand in the air, they keep jogging around, and every trailer has to find a new truck to follow. So you're mixing up groups right away. So that's called unhook. So the truck and trailer sequence, sometimes, I can get a whole 40 minutes out of just the first with partners. Because you can add level changes. You can add all kinds of different things. You could add like a directional shift. You could add different forms of locomotion. You have to skip, then add a new one. Can you crawl? You can add all these types of things that especially the younger elementary grades love to play around with. And again, we're playing with that peripheral vision as we go through. Okay, so that's the essence of truck and trailer. And again, this is, you can add an off-roading where now they have to do different things. You can add jumps into it. Partners, there is some other ones where partners are holding hips and you have lots of free runners. I have a resource that has a few different versions of this attached to this video as well. Okay. So the last little piece on this is how to stay creative. So this is also just a quick touch point on this, because the key to all tactics and following, as again, is constant motion. But this gets a little bit dry. So especially with the elementary kids, if we can introduce those elements of dance, those elements of gymnastics that add new and creative movement patterns into the games, the truck and trailer, into any of the beanbag work, what happens is that it starts to become more play and kids take more autonomy over what it is they're doing. Yoshi, this is there's a link to this Yoshi. I play this with the entire N line. This is another great game for students to add in some of the strategy for those grade 3, 4s, and 5s and 6s, because this is an invasion game. And anyone who saw my session on teaching games for understanding, it was just a brief introduction. Teaching games for understanding allows us to now talk about tactics without the need for really specific skills. So in this one, it's a really simple game. Basically, you have two teams. One team is trying to get into the other person's zone and to get across the line. If you get tagged, you have to freeze. And your opponents are the ones who are trying to block you from getting free. And you just have to tag a player to get free. But there's a whole bunch of different levels of complexity to the game once students start to realize if we do this differently, we'll be able to win with more consistency. So there is a link there. That's a video link. It'll walk you through the whole game. And on that note, I'm going to end this one here. In the next video, I'm going to take a look at some of the vocabulary and some of the specific cusps on spatial awareness. So I hope you got something out of this. Go back through it and take a look at some of the links in the associated resource set I've put in this file as well. All right, thank you for joining me, and we'll hopefully see you on the next video.